Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy. If you're looking to expand your pool service or get support out in the field, or if you just want one-on-one coaching, join my coaching program with over 270 members and growing. Learn more at poolguycoaching.com.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about some common business mistakes that you can make. And every business mistake eventually will cost you money in your business. Sometimes it'll cost you time, which of course costs you money. So you want to avoid making these mistakes if you can. If you're looking to expand your pool service or get support out in the field, or if you just want one-on-one coaching, join my coaching program with over 270 members and growing. Learn more at poolguycoaching.com. I think one thing you have to do in business is separate everything from business and your personal preferences or leanings. This is one critical area where a lot of businesses fail. They are leaning towards one political party maybe, or maybe one church denomination in particular, and they'll let their personal feelings get in the way of business. And I've seen this happen a lot with service providers, service businesses in particular, small businesses that are run by people that think they are doing something altruistic by supporting one interest group over another, but ultimately they're not really capturing all the leads they can be capturing. What I mean by this is that a lot of times if you let something interfere with making money on this particular account, you're actually losing potential for future earnings. And I'll give you a good example of this. I have a plumber that I use. He's actually a general contractor who happens to be African American, and he talked a lot about business that was done. He's older, he's in the 70s, talked a lot about business that was done in the 80s and 90s, and how a lot of times he was doing a lot of real estate transactions. They would ignore him and his brother because of their ethnicity, and this was a big problem because these two brothers had a lot of money and they were buying houses cash and flipping them, and there was a lot of times where the realtors missed out on a pretty good commission because they were being particular and steering towards a certain demographic, which happens. This is something that happens a lot. There's a lot of laws that are in place to prevent this now, and the fair housing laws are one of them. But there is this kind of thing where this could happen and you lose a lot of money. The same thing with the customer, that if you don't like something about them, and they could be someone who would put your business flyer in their restaurant, you wouldn't even know they have a restaurant with 100 people coming in every day. You lose all those leads because of your personal preference against certain things. So I think that there has to be a clear distinction in business. Separate everything that you are personally opposed to, don't agree with business. Now there is a limit to this, of course. You want to be reasonable. There are certain things that you don't want to do or don't want to be involved in, and that's perfectly fine. But if it's something that is a personal thing, maybe take an introspective look at yourself and see if you're letting some personal feelings and opinions interfere with your business. This happens a lot again with people that have small businesses, and I understand that you have a right to do whatever you want. There's signs in restaurants that say we have the right to refuse service to anyone. I understand that, and I understand the concept of that. But beyond that, there's a lot of business that is lost out there because you can't separate business from personal. Happens every day, and I see it happening all the time. And I think that's a big mistake that you should avoid in your business. Another thing is not really accounting for inventory. Now, this is not the same thing as when you go into a mom and pop restaurant and you ask for a ranch dressing and they say, oh, it's 38 cents. Or even Cane's, where they charge you like 35 cents for the cane sauce. That's part of their business model of recapturing all their costs. I don't agree with it in particular. Maybe they should build in the cost of that into the product itself. Raise the price of everything by 20 cents. And that way, if anyone wants extra sauce or whatever, they're able just to provide it without charging people. Because I think it evens out. You have customers that want the sauce, some that don't want the sauce. And in my opinion, that's a bad business practice. I like Chick-fil-A where they just give you as much sauce as you want. Technically, in the drive-thru in California, they're only allowed to give you, I think, 2 sauces of each kind per order, but you can ask at the window for more sauces. There's one way to get around that, but they certainly don't charge you at this point for extra sauces. And this kind of translates into your pool business. Now, there are times where you'll let little things slide, like a stem O-ring for a filter. That's like $1.50 or $2. I mean, you can include that in the filter cleaning. If you're charging $110 for the filter cleaning, I don't really think you need to itemize a stem O-ring to the customer in that case. It's kind of built into the overall charge of the filter cleaning. Now, of course, diatomaceous earth, I don't charge for that either because it kind of evens out again. You have a certain amount of DE filters, at least in California, a certain amount of cartridge filters. Not every filter needs DE. I understand that's an expense, but that should be built into the filter cleaning charge. What I'm talking about more or less is the fact that you let little things go, like you put a pump basket in or a skimmer basket, or you forget to write it down or log it into your app as something you're charging the customer for. And these little things add up over time. And believe it or not, they can add up to a significant amount of money over time if you forget small cleaner parts or forget to log certain things and bill the customer. Now, what I like to do, of course, is always make sure that the inventory is accounted for. There's many different ways to do this. Of course, if you have an app like Skimmer, you can just enter it and then it'll just automatically generate it onto the invoice or the bill at the end of the month. If you have employees, you want to make sure that they're really careful and they definitely itemize everything. What would be good is to look at the invoices from the supplier to see if everything's been accounted for and nothing slipped through the cracks. Because if you let, $20 or $30 slip through every month, it doesn't seem like a lot of money. I mean, it's a small amount of money, but let's just go with $30. And you do that every month, and that's $360 a year. You go over a course of maybe 5 years, and that's $1,800 of kind of missed income based on inventory. Not a lot of money, you would say, but it's significant. I mean, that's enough to go on a weekend vacation somewhere, and that's just for missing pump baskets, Polaris, cleaner screws, little tiny things. Again, there should be some things built in to the actual charge that you're charging the customer for, like in the filter cleaning, but there are certain things that are not built in that you should be charging for. I'm not saying you need to itemize everything, but there are certain things that you want to keep track of inventory, and certainly no one likes paying extra for sauces when they go to restaurants. I wish these mom and pop places would understand this. I certainly don't because I'm rung up. I use my credit card. I pay, $40 for the order, and then they want to charge me 35 cents for something. And at Cane's, I've actually charged a Cane sauce on my credit card. Came out to like 38 cents. When the employee should have just gave it to me. So it's one of those things that kind of bothers me a little bit when people are nickel and diming, but certainly in your business, you're not nickel and diming the customer, charging them for a skimmer basket or pump basket, or even like a cleaner part that costs $5. There's something that you have to account for. If you do charge for the cleaner repair itself, you may just want to put those parts in the labor charge. That way you're not billing the customer for something tiny, because sometimes customers do get offended. I've had this happen before where you bill for like a pumplet O-ring and it's like a $6 part, and the customer's like, hey, what's this little $6 charge? It's one of those things where you're going to have to deal with it, but you don't want to lose money, and it's better to deal with the customer that's questioning a charge than losing the money on that particular inventoried item. Another big one is underbidding, and I've been guilty of this myself. And sometimes it's something that you just can't prevent. It's one of those things where you're paying attention, yes, and you have to be careful, but you miss things once in a while. And then, of course, you want to correct those underbidding issues right away. I've done this on green pools before. Back in the day when I did a lot of them, I would look at a pool, and I was pretty good at kind of sizing up the pool and how long it would take to clear it up. And usually my prediction was 90% correct, but there were those times where I looked at a pool, I gave a bid, let's say 450 or 500, and then I start the green pool process and I realize that this is going to take longer. I'm going to have to take more trips back there. I'm cleaning the filter more than I actually accounted for. And it's really difficult to approach a customer during the green pool cleanup. At least I found this the case in California. And if you charge them $500 to go back to them and say, oh, you know what, I found that this is a problem. And so, I'm using more chemicals and I have to clean the filter again. So it's going to be $600. It doesn't go over really well because it's one of those things where even myself, if I have a vendor go out there to do some work for me, if he's fixing, something at a rental and he says, oh, it's going to be another $120 because I didn't notice this the first time when I gave you the bid, that gives you a bad feeling about that particular vendor. And it's something that you don't want to create. You want to kind of capture that customer anyway to bring him on as a service client. So to me, when I underbid, and if it's a green pool cleanup and I'm going to get the service account anyway, I don't really worry too much about it. It's one of my mistakes, and I just eat the charge of that. And I just know that I'm going to make more money eventually over the course of the year, 2 or 3 years, as they are a service account on the route. But you want to avoid those underbidding situations as much as you can. One way to do it is to tell the customer a higher price. And this happens once in a while where I'll bid something higher and there's actually money saved in there. Now, I don't credit it back to the customer because that is kind of weird in some cases. I've never really had a vendor credit me back for anything they've done on any property. So it's not something that you generally will do, but you want to give yourself a cushion. So if you had a green pool cleanup that you would charge $500 for, you can charge $580 or $600 to give yourself that extra $80 or $100 cushion to account for any problems that may arise, like an extra filter cleaning, more chemicals. That's already built into the charge. You're not upcharging the customer or selling them something they don't need. You're just protecting your business's bottom line. And I've noticed a lot of people do this, and I think it's a smart business practice when you're bidding for a repair, let's say a filter install, and normally you would charge $400, but you look at the pool and it looks pretty complicated. There's some other plumbing in the way. You may have to cut something or cut a valve off, and it takes more time. Then bid $500. That gives you the extra time. And if you do the filter install and it turns out that you can get away with not cutting something and not doing it, it's fine because it kind of evens out. Because later on you're going to run into a situation where you have to do the extra work and you may be short a little bit on your hourly wage, but it kind of evens out over time. So I think overbidding is something better and a better practice than underbidding in most cases. Something that I've seen happen before, and I've been guilty of this myself, is when you get upset at a particular customer or situation, it doesn't look good, and it's one of those things where you are probably going to lose business by doing that. I think it's really tough sometimes not to get upset over certain situations. One that really bothers me sometimes is a customer that questions a price of something that I charge them for, and I have to go through the whole, rigmarole of unpacking. This is part of it is a delivery charge. Another part is the installation charge and so forth, and you're unpacking it. Again, this is something that does happen and something you have to deal with. Not a big deal, but if you lose your temper over it or get upset at the customer that's questioning you about a price on Amazon and why this is so expensive, or if a customer questions, hey, did you come last week? I didn't see you last week. These are all things that, depending on how your day is going, can rub you the wrong way. So it's important to kind of see every client as, of course, they're an income source, but also see them as a person that maybe is having a bad day and they're coming out there to kind of vent with you. And it's one of those things that I see a lot of business lost when tempers get out of place from one to the other. Even the customer can get upset, and this is something that you have to deal with. I remember when I first started out, I was working for a pool store. I was pretty young. I think I was like 17. And there was this customer that always would have a complaint against, something I was doing. And the person I worked for was like, don't let it bother you. It's not a big deal. But it did bother me. But I think his attitude and the way he was training was really smart, because it's one of those things where you have to learn that this is how the person is and this is how they're going to be with everyone. And he explained that they're like that with every single person they sent there. So it's not me. It's just the person. It's the person themselves. And you have to kind of account for those personality types. So I would always take a step back and, see what you can do to kind of bridge the gap without getting into an argument with the customer. Now, there are situations, and there was one time where a customer insisted that they paid me. This is way back in the day where they would leave a check in a time box. This is, I'm dating myself here, but cash or checks were left in a time clock all the time. And they insisted they pay me for a month. They didn't. They were getting upset. I was just trying to say, I was showing them that they didn't pay me, that they missed the payment. And it got to the point where It just was one of those accounts I had to walk away from. And you may get to a situation where you're at an impasse and you may have to drop that account. Of course, this was before reviews were out there on Yelp and Google, so be careful how you handle situations where you're in an impasse with the customer and you need to step away. A lot of times it's easier just to keep the account for another month or so and then come up with a reason why you're dropping them. You're rearranging your route, you can't service that area, or you have too many accounts, you have to let them go. And it's something that they'll kind of understand the reason, but usually they're not going to leave you a bad review at that point because they've cooled off and the argument's already been over for a month or two, and you can safely drop that account because you have to be cognizant of another business problem or error, and that is not being aware of or focused on the reviews you're going to get by doing something. So everything has to be done in mind with, are they going to leave me a negative review? It's a sad state of business, but it's the way it has to be now in the modern era. That you have to kind of keep into account, if I do this, if I don't show up, or if I just let the customer go, are they going to hold it against me? Are they going to leave a bad review, 1-star review? And the same goes for when you're bidding. If a customer doesn't like you, they can leave a bad review on your business as well. If they don't like your bid or your attitude. So just be very cognizant of the online reviews, which can really affect your business and is something to be really kind of hyper aware of in some cases, and cognizant of it, of course, and just kind of have your business work around it so that you don't get negative reviews, and try your best not to get anyone upset with you to give you a 1-star review. Because again, that really affects your business going forward, and your online reputation is really critically important. Looking for other podcasts, you can go to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon. There'll be a drop-down menu with 1,500 podcasts there for you. And if you're interested in the coaching program, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless. Real quick, if you're not using pool service software, try Skimmer free for 30 days at getskimmer.com/poolguy. Again, that's getskimmer.com/poolguy. Skimmer, everything you need to run your pool service business all in one app.